Welcome to the Construction Leading Edge, the podcast dedicated to helping construction professionals become better entrepreneurs and leaders. Now, let's get started. Welcome everyone to another episode of The Construction Leading Edge, the site and podcast dedicated to helping construction professionals become more effective entrepreneurs and leaders. Who am I? Well, my name is Todd DeWalt, and I'll be your host today. By the way, if you're wondering, who is this guy on this podcast, then listen until the end of the podcast, and I'll spend a few minutes talking about my background, a little bit about me, and let you know how you can get in touch with me if you want to do that. Now, let's get into today's content. Question: have you ever had to fire someone because of attendance, performance, competency, or other issues? Have you ever found that you've put it off too long? Do you maybe have someone on your team right now who you think you might have to discipline or fire, or as some people like to say, release or set free? Then you need to listen to this episode on how to never fire another employee. In this episode, I'm going to talk about some strategies and tips that I've used in hiring and firing over the past 15 years or so, and I think it'll help you. I've found that this helps me to never fire people, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You're probably not buying this, but hopefully by the end of this podcast, you'll be smelling what I'm cooking. So, first tip, number one, you need a detailed job description. You need to be extremely detailed in putting together a job description, outlining the job responsibilities, talk about the working conditions, if there will be heavy lifting involved. We're talking about construction people for the most part, so if we're looking at hiring people in the field, make sure you are explicit that this job involves working outside in the elements. It involves heavy lifting. Could be working in confined spaces. Be extremely detail-oriented so there are no surprises. For example, I hired a guy once to work on a municipal sewer repair crew, and he was a plumber. He worked in plumbing for years prior to that. And after he was working for us for several months, he called me and said, "Hey, I didn't realize that when you hired me that I'd be working in sewer lines." Now, I thought I'd made it really clear that that's what he would be doing. Kind of went without saying that he was a plumber. He would be working around sewer lines, but apparently I was not clear enough. So we can't be clear enough when putting together a job description. What will the compensation be? Go ahead and put that in the job description. If this is a $16 an hour job, if you're willing to pay $16 an hour, put that in the job description. If it's a $95,000 a year job for an executive, put that in the job description. That will cut out the people who are either overqualified or underqualified. So you might as well put it in there, and that will reduce the amount of applications and resumes you get on your desk, because you're not after a stack of resumes, right? You're not after a stack of applications. You're trying to find the right candidate to fill the job. Clearly define expectations. You need to, first of all, establish in your mind, what does success look like for this particular role? If this is a field crew position, what does success look like? Is it attendance? Are there specific measurable activities that you're going to measure success? Is it you're expecting them to work a certain number of hours a week, put a certain number of units in place, drive a certain number of miles, whatever it is? You need to think about, what does success look like? How will you measure this person and determine if they're successful? And then put that in the job description. What some people call these are key result areas, or KRAs. They're also known as measurable business objectives, MBOs. You need to decide what is the measuring stick you're going to use to determine if this person is being successful 3, 6, 9, 12 months down the road, and then communicate that to them. Let them know this is how success will be measured. This is what winning looks like. The next step, once you have your detailed job description put together, you've established your job duties, you have the measuring stick established, you know what success looks like, you have some key result areas, measurable business objectives, you've defined what compensation will be. Next, you need to hire slow. Dave Ramsey of Entree Leadership had what he called the mirror test that he used to use when he would hire people because he was in such a hurry, the walls were burning down, he needed help desperately. So what he called the mirror test was he would hold a mirror up in front of a candidate's face. If they exhaled and they fogged up the mirror, boom, they had a job. Check the pulse. You got a pulse. You need a job. I need your help. And it didn't work. That is not that's not a good hiring practice. So here's what you need to do. Hire slow, and that starts with forecasting labor needs. You can't wait until you need somebody to hire somebody. You need to look down the road and think 30, 60, 90 days down the road, what am I going to need? Don't plan on being able to hire somebody tomorrow. All that does is put you in a situation where you're hiring the first guys or gals that come in off the street, and they may be great, but you don't want to put yourself in a position where you have to hire the first person off the street. So forecast your labor needs. Look at seasonal needs. Look at your workload. Look at your backlog, and figure when you need someone. If you need someone, figure on 30 days to hire that person. That will give you plenty of time to get all this preliminary work done, to put the job description together, KRAs, MBOs, all those acronyms. Get a good stack of applications out there and interview some folks. So figure on 30 days. If you can do that, you'll probably be in pretty good shape for field crews. If you're talking about administrative and executive level folks, probably 60 to 90 days, because that's a smaller pool that you're going to go through, and those folks have more of an impact on your organization. You're going to want to take more time to do that. A good quote that I've heard is that no employee is better than a bad employee. And if you've ever had bad employees on your team that are not producing, they suck the life out of the organization, and you're better off doing the work yourself and having no employee than that bad employee. Next, hire before you need to. All right? Don't wait until you need somebody tomorrow and go bring the first guy on that passes that fog up the mirror test. So hire, if you think you'll need someone in 45 days, start the process now. Hire them in 30 days and have a week or 2 weeks to get them oriented, onboarded, and see if they're going to be the right fit. Here's something that I've found works well in the interview process is have multiple interviews. Bring them in and send them away. Bring them back in, send them away. Make them call you. See if they will actually follow through, see how responsive they are, see if they will show up. That'll tell you a lot, because if someone won't show up for an interview on time, that's not a good sign. If they won't call back in for a phone interview, if they won't respond to an email, then that's probably a red flag. You should see red flags and bells and whistles going off. Stay away from that person. But make it a multiple-step process. Something I've found is if I get the inkling that someone might be a source of drama, then I'll do something that may offend them a little bit. Now, I'm not talking about offending them, like saying something derogatory. I'm saying I want to try to stoke that a little bit and see, will they get offended because maybe I'm 5 minutes late for a phone call, or I put them off. If I'm going to have problems with this person, if they're going to cause drama, then I want to know that before I bring them on the team. And I've seen this in the past. Here's a good story. Just a few months ago, I had got a recommendation from one of our current employee about this other guy. He had great experience. He had all the credentials. He had done the type of work we were looking for. Great experience. And I asked him a question about, there was something in his record or something in his past that I had a question about. It wasn't a showstopper. I just asked the question, hey, tell me a little bit more about this. And the guy went crazy, went over the top crazy, making accusations that made no sense whatsoever. Things like, well, I know you have convicted felons working for you, and things that just weren't true at all. And in his one of his last email correspondence, he said, "I'm going to show up at the city council meeting where you do work and tell them about all this," just a bunch of crazy stuff. So I was really glad that guy showed his crazy before we brought him on the team. It's much easier to just tell somebody, sorry, obviously you're not the right fit, when you see that crazy during the interview process, then go through all the effort to bring them on board, only to find out they're crazy then. So hire them slow, send them away, bring them back in, try to offend them if you can. Again, don't be derogatory, don't talk about their mama, but try to get them off balance a little bit, see how they respond, because you're generally going to see the best of a person during the interview and pre-hire process. Generally doesn't get better, if you know what I'm saying. And then once you're ready to hire somebody, put the offer in writing. Whatever you talk about, money obviously needs to be in writing, work location, how are you going to handle travel, per diem, some of the extraneous stuff. It's usually the small things that come back to bite you. If you talked about it in the interview, then make sure you put it in writing and then get them to agree on it so there's no misunderstanding, no room for clarification or interpretation. So, detailed job description. Number 2, hire slow. Number 3, train properly. It is your job as the leader to provide the tools and resources necessary for training. You're going to outline the criteria for success, but then if you only outline the criteria for success and you say, hey, here's the measuring stick you're going to be measured by, but you don't give them the training they need, then you suck. Bottom line, it's your job to establish the criteria for success, but then teach them, give them the tools so that they can measure up. There are so many different training resources available, many of which are free. Google it, go on YouTube. You can find a lot of safety training. There's online training available. You do not need to bring a safety consultant in or some training guru in every time you have a new hire. There's a great online, on-demand training program that I've used by J.J. Keller. I'll put a link in there. You basically can view safety training for hundreds of topics on demand and essentially rent a video for, I think it's 72 hours, and it's very reasonable. It's much more reasonable than buying training material. So I'll put a link to that in the notes. Check it out. It's been very beneficial for us, and maybe it'll help you out as well. So identify what the criteria for success would be. Give them the tools and resources for training. Something else I like to do is put the new hire with an experienced employee. This is not a formal mentor-apprentice type relationship, but you may want to bounce them around with a couple of different experienced guys or gals on your team. So this will do a couple of things. Actually, it does at least 3 things I can think of. 1, it gives this person an opportunity to develop, the new hire, to develop relationships with the company and develop relationships with people who can help them in the company. It also will empower these experienced employees because it gives them an opportunity to teach, which is something that is a real benefit to them, and it empowers them, makes them feel better about their job, and it gives them more fulfillment. Not sure what the words are, but it helps. You just have to trust me on that. And the third thing is, these experienced employees whom you trust, as they're checking out this new hire, it gives you some good opportunities for feedback. After your experienced person spends a few days with the new hire, you can pull them in and say, hey, what do you think about this person? And sometimes you have the right person. You get the right person on the bus, and you stick them in the wrong seat in the beginning, and by putting them with different experienced people early on, gives you an opportunity to find the right seat on the bus for that person, and they'll be more successful. So that's a great way to do that. Another thing that I would strongly recommend would be to set up whatever you want to call it, an onboarding checklist, an orientation checklist, a training checklist. Come up with a list of all the steps of the key things that new hires need to know when they start with your organization, and make sure that somebody shows them that. Where is the tool room, where are office supplies kept, housekeeping things all the way down to safety training. If they need confined space entry training, do they need 10-hour OSHA training? Do they need 40-hour OSHA training? Do they need their some sort of endorsement on their commercial driver's license? Whatever it is that's important to be done, then put it on a checklist, assign it to somebody, make sure it gets done. And by the time you get through that process, which could take 2 to 3 weeks, you will have a good idea if that person's a good fit for you, and you will know what seat on the bus they should be on. Okay, so we have our detailed job description. We have hired slowly. We have trained properly. Now we get down to the secret sauce. At the top of this show, I titled this, How to Never Fire Another Employee. You're probably wondering how this works. Here's how this works. Okay, this is what I call the do you want to work the rest of the day tactic. And it goes back to my early days as a project engineer working on the job sites. I was responsible for shooting grade, doing layout, concrete crews, and I was also responsible for maintaining safety for our direct forces as well as subcontractors. And for several months, I would see somebody with a hard hat, and I would have to tell that was not wearing their hard hat, and I would tell them, dude, you got to wear your hard hat. Put your hard hat on. Wear your safety glasses. You can't be up there without being tied off. You've got to put a guardrail up. You're not doing this. And I was constantly policing these guys, and I was taking the responsibility of them working safely. And I came upon this tactic that worked really well. And it's what I call the do you want to work the rest of the day tactic. So I would see someone, let's say they didn't have their hard hat on, and the first thing I would say was, hey, do you want to work here the rest of the day? And of course they would say, well, yeah. And I would say, well, in that case, put your hard hat on, because if you're going to work here the rest of the day, you have to wear your hard hat. If you don't want to wear your hard hat, that's fine, but you can't be here. So it's your choice. And basically I put the choice on them. So if I saw someone who wasn't working safely, if they weren't tied off properly, I had to stop the situation, and I would tell them, hey, if you want to work the rest of the day, you need to get tied off. You need to work safely. If you don't want to do that, that's fine, but you can't be on my job site. So what's it going to be? You choose. If you want to work here, you work safe. If you don't want to work safe, go work somewhere else. And that worked really well. So I use that same approach with non-safety related issues with regard to performance, attendance, or any other HR type issue that come up with employees. So here's an example. A few months ago, one of our guys was missing a lot of work, missing a day or two a week of work. He was consistently running late, clocking in improperly. We had several problems. Started looking at records and found this was a fairly consistent chronic problem. So we brought the guy in and said, we'll just say his name was John. All right, John, here's the deal. Here's the problem. The issue is you're running late consistently, you're clocking in wrong, and you're missing too much work. That's a problem because we need you here. It causes scheduling problems when you're missing work. You show up late. It shifts your workload to other guys. Here, we laid out the problem. And then at the end of the conversation came the if you want to work here tactic, and it was in order to continue working here, here's what you need to do. These are the criteria for success. You have to be on time. You have to be here every day. If you are running late, you need to contact your supervisor. We laid out the criteria for success and then said, if you don't do these things, then you are subject to termination. Do you understand this? Can you handle this? Do you agree to these terms? So we got John to agree to the terms that in order to continue working with our organization, he had to meet these criteria for success. The very next day, the guy was an hour and 15 minutes late for work, and when he finally called his supervisor, he said, I guess I'm fired, aren't I? Because he had fired himself. We had laid out the criteria for success. We told him where the lines on the field were, so to speak. Said, this is what you've got to do if you're going to continue to work here. If you choose to show up late, not come to work, not call, all of these things that are in your control, if you choose this path, then you will be saying, I don't want to work here anymore. If you choose to show up on time, come to work every day, communicate properly, follow the well-established criteria for success, then you're choosing to work here. So we put the burden of responsibility on the person, and they fire themselves. This works beautifully. The key is you have to communicate it, you have to establish those boundaries, and you have to be willing to have a big boy conversation with these folks. It has to be an adult, mature conversation. It can't be some screaming argument. And honestly, it doesn't have to be argumentative. In fact, I've put together a document that I use to work through these issues that provides a framework and a process for working through any sort of HR issue. Could be whether it's with an employee about their attendance, their time, their competence, their whatever the case may be. You can use it dealing with subcontractors. You can use it dealing with your clients if you have an issue that needs to be resolved. You can use it with your wife, for that matter. It's a framework for resolving issues, and I'd be happy to send it to you. If you want a copy of it, send me an email at todd@constructionleadingedge.com, and I'll be happy to send it to you. I think it'll help. So now that brings us to the point where we now know how to never fire another employee again, and that's by being very detailed, setting expectations very clearly, having a very detailed job description from the very beginning. We've hired slow, we have trained properly, and then we have put the onus, so to speak, on the employee and given them the choice. Do you want to work here anymore? If so, here's the criteria for success. So I hope that helps you. Let me know. I just gave you my email address. Hit me on my email address, or on Twitter if you have any comments or questions. My Twitter handle is @conleadedge, CON lead edge. Be curious to see if this works for you. If you have some other tactics you'd like to share, do the same thing. So now let me tell you a little bit about myself. Who is this guy that is doing this podcast? My name is Todd DeWalt. I manage a company of about 40 employees in Lexington, Kentucky, and we work in municipal wastewater sewer rehabilitation. And why am I doing this podcast? Because I've been in this business for about 17 or 18 years now, and I've worked with a few good leaders, but I've also worked with a lot of folks who sucked as leaders, quite frankly. And I made a decision that we need to fix it. We as an industry need to get better in the area of leadership. Frankly, we're behind the curve, behind other industries when it comes to leadership. So I wanted to do this podcast and interview successful entrepreneurs, because obviously there's a reason that they've been successful, and I think part of their success is due to their approach to leadership and business. So the idea is to talk to some successful people, come up with some actionable items that we can all put in place. I want to learn, and I hope that you can gain something from this in the process as well. All right, guys, that's it for today. Hope this has been helpful. Send me an email at todd@constructionleadingedge. Hit me on Twitter. Head over to constructionleadingedge.com. Check out some articles there. Let me know if you have questions, and if there are people that you know of that you'd like to hear interviewed, or if you'd like to be interviewed, shoot me an email. Hope it helps. Have a great day, guys.